Welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about HTML, organize our HTML structure for our page or document. So we had the HTML tag, the head tag, the body tag. We also talked about the meta tags that are used within the head and the purpose of rendering in the browser, giving instructions to the browser on how to render content, maybe information for search engines on how to find content and how to display it for their users as they're using their search engine, information specifically on the page itself. So we had the title that appears on the page browser, on the browser or the tab, and then also linking our CSS to our HTML document. So now let's go ahead and move down and we're going to go to the body tag. The body tag also, when HTML5 was developed, they created some other tags that can be used within the body so that we know kind of the content and where things are going to be organized. So that's very, very, very important. The first thing that we're going to do in the body tag is we're going to add the three main content areas here. So the first one is going to be the header, which is again not a self-closing tag. You can see that. And then here we're going to have the main, which is the main content of the page. And then here we're going to have footer, which is going to be, you guessed it, the footer area or like the bottom part of your page. This will really help organize content within your page. Now, here's something that I don't know if you've noticed. As we've been writing this code using our IDE automatically, every time that we hit enter, it automatically gives us one tab of separation. Here is done through spaces, or it could be tabs based on how you have that set up. But the reason why it does that is because of legibility. Having that one tab separation kind of lets us know from a glance. So for example, if I were to zoom out of this document, I could immediately see, without being able to read this, that this is one section of one block of code, another block of code, a separate block of code right here. And then I'll be able to see that inside of this block of code, I have these other blocks of codes or this block of code here. That's very important, especially for readability. So in HTML doesn't really care as far as what type of spacings you have. But this is mainly done not only for you to be able to know and read better your code, but also for anybody else that might come in the future and read this. Another reason why I will encourage you, if your IDE does not provide these spaces for you to set them up manually, or for you to set up your IDE so that it does do tabs automatically, because the reason why I recommend that, especially as you are starting, is that when you see them tabbed, if, for example, I were to be missing this body tag, here I'll be able to know I'm missing something here because this is indented here, but this one doesn't have a closing tag associated to it. So very important, especially as we're learning, to getting the good habit of tabbing your content. As if you progress and you want to learn maybe other languages, for example, Python requires you to tab content to know where that block of code starts and where it ends. So again, it's a good habit to get into, especially right now that you're starting. So we created these three sections on your body content. We created the header, the main, and the footer sections. Now, this is just for organization purpose. If we go over here to our browser and we refresh, there's still no content inside of it. So now let's go ahead and go into our main into our HTML, and let's go ahead and start adding some content to it. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add some paragraphs. So in order to do a paragraph, you do the less than sign, the P for paragraph, and then here we're just going to call header content area. In the main section, we're going to call it, guess what? Main content area. And in the footer, I'm going to just call it footer content area. These are 3 paragraph tags. Again, make sure that you have the opening tag and the closing tag, and then anything inside of that is just considered the content of that tag. So again, we have a paragraph tag with content inside of it. If we go to the browser and we refresh, then you'll see we have our header content area, our main content area, and our footer content area. Again, this doesn't look much like a website because we haven't added any styles to it. However, we are going to do that going forward. So we're going to build our website as we're speaking. So this is kind of just a starting point for our content areas for our site. So let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about different markup that we can add to our content so that we can express or show our customers or the people visiting our website, our target audience, what content we have on the site. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is going to be headings. So we have something called an H1, which is our heading 1, and this goes all the way into heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, heading 6. Heading 5, heading 6. And what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this content here. So let's go ahead and change that, 5 and 6. And we're going to change that so we're going to have heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, and heading 6. And we're going to change that so that we know which one we're looking at, although it will be visually noticeable, the changes between heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, we open a heading 2, so we need to close a heading 2 back here. So we're going to do that. If you don't, then your page will look a little bit weird, or it might work properly, but it's always good to have semantically correct HTML. Sorry. So let's go ahead and go into our browser real quick, and we're going to refresh it. Now, if you go into the browser and you refresh it, you'll see that we have our heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, heading 6. Now, you might ask yourself, why do we care about this? Is it just because of the size of the heading? Yes, but that's not the only reason why we're doing these headings. Headings themselves help search engines find what is most relevant, second relevant, third relevant, fourth relevant, fifth relevant, sixth relevant things on the page. We borrowed all of these conventions, like the headings and paragraphs, for example, lists that we're going to do in just a little bit. All of these things are borrowed from books. If you think about your books, if you have a textbook or any book that you have read, that H1 is the main heading on that page. And then you may have subheadings. You can think of it as main heading, subheading, third headings. I personally don't make any changes for heading 5 and 6. Even though those are available, I feel that your content should be succinct enough and should be well crafted that you don't have to go that level in depth. However, if you need to have them, those are going to be available for you. I personally don't use them, hardly use them, but again, they are available, and that's why I want to show this to you. Now, let's go ahead and go up to the header area. Let's pretend that we have here our content. So let's pretend that we have a menu. What a menu is, or a navigation menu, is really a list of links. If you thought about the navigation in any page, it just tells you or gives you a list of all the pages that are available for you to navigate within your site. So let's go ahead and create an unordered list, and I'll explain what it is and how you can use it. So the first thing is you again open up your tag UL for unordered list. You see that it's not a self-closing tag, so we're gonna hit enter. And then inside of the unordered list, you have this thing called list items or LIs, which are not self-closing tags either. These LIs is what holds the content. So let's go ahead and, for example, here type in menu 1. And then here we're going to duplicate this. We're going to do maybe menu 2, menu 3, and menu 4. This is an unordered list, so it's just a bulleted list. If we go to the browser and we refresh, then you'll see we have a bulleted list. If we wanted to have an ordered list, so a numbered list, then you'll change that UL to OL, order list. Again, conventions that we have borrowed from books. And so here you can see that there. So we have an unordered list of menus, but the common practice is to use unordered lists. So we have menu 1, menu 2, menu 3, menu 4. Now you may have noticed that some pages, some navigations may have a drop-down menu where they have other links inside of it. So if you think about it, we are doing sub-lists of the main list. In order to create those, let's go ahead and create that, for example, for number 3. We're going to hit return on the closing of the list item, and guess what? It's a sub list, so we need to create a new list here. So we're going to do UL, and inside of that unordered list, we're going to have other menu items. So here again, we're creating a list item, and here let's just call it 3.1, and we're going to create maybe a few of those. And then we have 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. If we go back to our browser, then you'll see that now we have this submenu. Guess what? If we wanted to do another submenu, we will follow the same procedure. So we'll go something here. We'll hit a return before the closing of the list item that we want to add the submenu to. And then here we can do UL again, or unordered list, and add another list item. So here menu 3.2.1, and so on and so forth. This encoding is called nested lists. Nested lists. These are very important to keep them semantically. In other words, look at what I'm going to do. Don't do it, please. Just look at what I'm doing. If I were to remove this here, and add the unordered list here. So for example, here we're going to do UL, list item, and here menu 3.2.1. And just for expediency, because I'm going to revert this, I were to do this, pay attention. I'm going to go to the browser, and you'll see this is how it used to look like before. If I refresh it, did something change besides just that extra menu item that I added? No, it looks the same. However, semantically speaking, it's incorrect because this is supposed to be a submenu of menu 3.2, but they are not related to each other because the LI is not wrapping around this submenu item. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, please add them to the comments below. So here's what we're going to do. This is how a navigation will look like. So let's go ahead and I'm going to kill this third level menu And we're going to change this to say, for example, home. The second menu will look something like about. The third menu will look something like projects. The fourth menu will look something like contact. And then here, maybe this will be project 1, project 2, project 3. So let's go ahead and change that. And yeah, why not? We'll do the project 4 as well. If you go back to your browser, then you'll see that looks very close to what a navigation looks like. However, what are we missing? The navigation looks similar. However, we are missing something very important, which is the links. The HTML is all about the connection of one file to another. Hypertext links. So what we need to do is we need to create some links for the home page, the About Us page, the projects page, and the contact page. So let's go ahead and do that. In order to create a link, you will go inside of a block level element, like for example, a list item, or inside of the heading 1, or inside of the paragraph. And here's where we're going to add the markup for links. So in order to do that, it will be the less than sign. And the markup for links is going to be an A. That stands for anchor tag. This is our anchor tag. Here, again, you can see that it's not a self-closing tag. So we're going to wrap our home tag with an anchor tag. If we refresh here, nothing has happened. The reason why, because we haven't given it any attributes. So what we're going to do inside of our anchor tag is we're going to add some attributes. The first attribute we're going to add is Href. Href should look somewhat similar to you. If you remember, we used it up here. Href is the source of, or the reference to, the file that we want to make a reference to. Here again, we have not created this file yet, but we're still going to go ahead and add it here. We will create it in the future, because if you notice, we go here and we add the double quotes. Here you can see that we have this structure. We're going to keep everything on the root folder, right? Our basic folder so you'll be next to our template.html file. And here what we're just going to do is we're going to name it index.html. And if we go back to the browser and we refresh, now it looks just like a link. See, it changed colors and it has an underline to it. If we click on it, it will give us an error because the file has not been created, so the file is not found. But we know that we have a link and that it exists. The next thing that we need to do or be aware of is that there are many more tags in here. What we're going to add, the second tag that will be very important, especially for accessibility. That means for people who have maybe visual disadvantages or hearing disadvantages and they still want to go through your site, we're trying to make it very accessible for them to navigate through the site if they have to have some sort of screen reader or whatever it may be on the site. So we're going to add this thing called title, and we're going to call it home. If you refresh if you go to the browser, don't refresh yet. If you go to the browser and you hover over this, nothing happens. But if you refresh it after we added the title tag and we hover over it, now you see that this little pop-up came up and says home. Very important, especially for those who need a little bit of extra help, who are at a disadvantage visually that cannot see the browser. If they're using a screen reader, this will help the screen reader read the information for the link. And the last thing that we might see on a homepage or on an anchor tag is going to be the target. Now I know it's a store, but the target lets the browser know when a user clicks on this anchor tag. Do we want it to open in the same page? Do we want it to open in a separate page? The default value, as you notice, is that when we go here, we click on it, you see that there's not a new tab that has been created or open to open this file. So usually the default value for the target is self. So this, if we go refresh it, it'll have the same behavior. It opens in the same page or in the same tab. But what if you're referring to a page maybe outside of your website? Maybe you want to send them to another website, or maybe another article that you read somewhere else outside of your website. Rather than using self and the user losing the tab that they're working on, you could add the target blank. If you use the target blank, what it does is it opens this link in a blank new tab. So if we go to the browser, we refresh and we click home. Pay attention to the right hand side of my tab. We hit home, then it opens it up in a brand new tab. The most common way to go about it is if it is within your site, you don't have to add any of this because the target will be automatically self. But if you want them to link outside of your website, then you will want to use the target blank. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to give you some time. If you want to, go ahead and pause this video, or you can see as I do it for the rest of the pages, but try to go ahead and create the anchor tag or the link for the about page, for the projects page, for the project 1, 2, 3, and then maybe for the contact page. So, and then you can see what, and compare it to my code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it in all of them, just because it makes it a lot easier. And then I'm going to copy the closing tags. Oh, my IDE automatically did that for me. So let me go ahead and copy them or cut them and paste them right outside them. By the way, as you progress in your knowledge on HTML, I know that right now this is maybe moving too fast for some of you, but some of you might be moving very slow. But again, as the better and better you get with code, then you'll be able to do it faster and faster. It'll make more sense. So again, here we have to change that to about, to projects. And then here you'll notice something interesting. Let's go ahead and change the title to about, and then projects. And then here you'll notice something. So I'm going to name this file project-1, or better yet, project_1. You'll notice that I don't do spaces in this, and I'll show you why. So let me go ahead and do project space 1 here. I'm going to do project-2 on the next one. Project_3 and project no space 4. And I'm going to go back here. Let's go ahead and call this project 1, project 2, project 3, and project 4. And then of course, let's do the contact. And then here, just add the contact. All right. So something is wrong here. Oh, I had closed that tag in there. So that was an error. another benefit of having an IDE is that it kind of shows you if something is wrong. So that's very good as well. So let's go ahead and close that. Perfect. Now, if we go back to the browser and we refresh, then you'll see that we have each one of these links here. And you can see that also down here. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen or your screen when you hover and over, it kind of tells you the name of the file as you are hovering over them. I'm going to open them in a new tab just so that you can see how they look as far as the URL. So we'll look at those real quick. So let me go ahead and open it. Open. The way that I'm opening them is using my cursor, my mouse, and using the wheel. When I press the wheel of the mouse, then it opens them in a new tab. If you wanted to do the same, you might want to right click and open link in new tab, and that will do the same thing. So let's go to the number 2 tab, and you'll see these space between that file. Here, it may look like it's fine, but what the browser is going to do, once you have once it's inside of a server, what it's going to say is spaces don't get rendered properly on a site or in a URL. So what you might see is that space gets turned into %20. And if you notice, I typed in %20. See? %20. And I hit enter, and it gave me the same URL because the browser interprets it as a space. However, when you go to Google and you search for your page, it will have that %20. That's why I always recommend that students or people who are creating new sites, that they don't create spaces on their file naming. When we go to create these files, I always would recommend either using the dash so that it's better to read, the underscore like I have it here, or if not, then maybe not have any spaces between them and do something like camel casing, which we might talk later on in JavaScript. But again, my 2 favorite options are either the dash or the underscore for creating files themselves. So let's go ahead and close them. I'm closing them the same way with the middle mouse. And let's go ahead and go back over here and let's get rid of that space there and the underscore. And we're just going to stick 2 dashes for our file names. All right, so in this video, we went ahead and created the body tags that are going to hold information. We looked at some markup for content like our paragraphs, our headings, our unordered lists or order lists, because the markup is pretty much the same. The only difference is that you changed from an OL to a UL. And we also looked at anchor tags for our navigation as well, or links that you can use within the page. That doesn't have to be on the navigation itself. If you want to, for example, here, if we go to the paragraph, we can add an anchor tag, and we can just do an anchor tag to say https://google.com. We'll add the target to be blank, and we add the title to be google.com. Even though the word says area, let's take a look at this. All right, I'm missing that closing tag right there. Erase that. If you notice, when we go to our site and we refresh, it'll say area, but when we hover over it, the title will say google.com. And when we click on it, then it opens up Google for us. Again, it's opening up Google in a new tab because we used the target underscore blank for this specific link. So we've learned all these different things. I would suggest I will have some links on the description below. If you want to read a little bit more about headings and their importance on order lists and see other documentation for it. If not, then let's go ahead and stick with me. And in the next video, we're going to start working a little bit using some CSS to make our site look a little bit more presentable. So see you in the next video.